always that misalignment about what you think is a priority versus what truly is priority. And then I realized that I need to do something new, right? So that's where I, reassess to really understand who I am, where my strengths is, what I really wanted to do. So that's how I started Tigon Advisory.
Welcome everyone to the Road Less Traveled Show. This is a show about people who were successful in a previous career that left to follow a different path. I'm your co-host, Richard Coyne.
And I'm your co-host, Bill Zahller.
On today's show, we have Helen Yu. And Helen, we're thrilled to have you here. And let me hand it over to you, Bill.
Great. Thanks, Richard. Yeah, Helen, welcome to the Road Less Traveled Show. Pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Bill and Richard. It's a pleasure being here.
Great, thank you. And just wanted to tell us a little about yourself. If we can start off with, what was your former career, and how many years were you in that line of work?
Wow, depends on how much time you have. Well, let's first let me use 3 words to describe who I am first. I'm a curious, courageous multiplier. So if this were last day on Earth, I would hope people left behind to say that I made their lives better in measurable ways. And that, I multiplied their joy, prosperity, and knowledge. So I actually started my career as an accountant and financial analyst. My curiosity and learning agility got me where I'm at today. I learned to code as a Hyperion consultant. That's where Richard and I met, as a matter of fact. Went on to design, implemented 400 plus financial planning applications, working alongside CFOs. Then I run Oracle BI consulting practice. Post-acquisition was the added pleasure of learning from then Oracle executive sales leader, Keith Block. Under his tutelage, I learned the nuance of enterprise solution sales as a solution architect at Oracle, and then learned marketing and SaaS at Adobe, and then successfully led the startup to scale up challenges at Marketo. So my journey led me to recognize the critical disconnect in growth-driven technology startups, prompting me to become an entrepreneur of startup growth accelerator 4 years ago. It's called Tigon Advisory.
Oh, excellent. And then Tigon, that's the path you're on now. Can you tell us a little bit about where you are with your current company?
Yeah, sure. So currently, really Tigon as a Tigon Advisory company, what we do 2 types of work. The first type is being a fractional CXO to startups. So I consider our company as an Uber for startups, right? As you think about the early stage startup or even mid stage, they can't afford a full staff or executive team. What they do, sometimes they just pay us a flat fee. They can get us engaged either as a interim CRO, interim CMO, interim chief customer officer, and then they can change and switch based on their need from time to time. And then the second part we do is offer the influencing marketing to Fortune companies. We generate the contents for them. We build a brand awareness for them, and we help them promote events. We also offer the managed cybersecurity services for some of the companies, or sales transformation, digital transformation as a service to the Fortune companies.
All right. Now, Helen, you also released a book. Tell us about that, please.
Yes. So my book called Ascend Your Startup, Conquer the 5 Growth Disconnect to Accelerate Growth. That was released May 25th. Ever since the release, it is a decision framework for startup founders or business leaders to really understand the 3 things, right? The first is, when we talk about disconnect, is the blind spot a business leader may have as they scale the business. So there are 5. I described what these 5 disconnect would be, from product market fit disconnect to defined minimum viable disconnect to voice of customer disconnect to the process disconnect and measurement disconnect. So that really walk them through, right? What are the questions you ask? In this book, describing 26 questions is really decision point for the founders or business decision makers to make. And then really help them to, it's based on real life experience, right? I've had 500 plus conversations with the business leaders, regardless of the size of the company, and then illustrate some of the first time experience, 15 plus years experience. What are things that we've done to help overcome some of the growth challenges? But in this book, also, this book was dedicated to my grandmother. Right, before I was raised by her, before she passed away, she said 3 things to me: stay special, make the world proud, and spread my ashes to a tall mountain. So I carried her ashes to the Mount Everest base camp, and through that experience, I learned, 4 lessons, and I later on applied that 4 lessons to the business world. So this book is not just a boring business strategy aligning with the practice. It's also a personal story, how I applied the climbing experience and lessons I learned to the business world and make it really, really interesting, right? So I hope you get an opportunity to read that.
I've read it, and actually I thought it was fantastic. And again, the thing that I really enjoyed about it is that it's very much taking all of your technical background and your work with tech startups. Bill and I aren't a tech company, but we're still a young company ourselves, and we took some really good lessons out of that we're gonna look to apply to how we continue to grow our business. So again, well done, absolutely. Thanks. Yeah, absolutely. All right, so Helen, so go back. Can you think about your early days? Is there a funny story that you can share? Not about me, since you and I've known each other, but is there a funny story you can share? Something that made you kind of go, why am I doing this?
I was going to say about the nickname, who is the story of the king, but anyway. So back in the early 2000, right, I was a solution architect or consultant at Hyperion. At the time we released, I don't know, Richard, if you remember, we released a brand new Hyperion planning product at the time. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. So at the time, our partners were not really enabled just yet. So this one customer as the bank, right, bank customer in Columbus or Columbia, Ohio, we got a call from them expressing the concern about the system stability. They threatened us to really sue us. So what happened is, right, their server crashed after running aggregation command for after 19 hours. You know what we do at Hyperion, we help customers close their book, financial statements. So that was month's end, they could not close their book on time. After investing so much in a brand new system, it didn't really work. So I was more like Navy SEALs, right, part of that team. And then they called me to say, Helen, can you fly in to see what's going on there? I said, why don't you send me? So our partner called, right? I sent me what they build. I look at the design. I said, there is no way we designed something like this with 10 dimensions. And how are you going to run anything with that? That's really too big, right? So I flew in. I walked into this conference room. It's all guys, right? At that time, and then very interesting. They're all did not even want to look at me. So I walked in. I said, "Is this a funeral here? There's a funeral here." So all of them start laughing like you, like chuckling. Then I kind of lightened the room, because everyone was serious. They're not happy. They were angry. So I passed them a Post-it note. I said, why don't each of you write 2 things on this? Tell me, why did you decide to invest in Hyperion in the first place? So then they started writing something positive, right? You have to why did you even invest in us in the first place? Brought back all the good memory. They write down. So I take it back. I said, let me read it, right? So I start reading about it, what the goal they want to achieve. I said, I'm so happy because that's why I'm here. Right? Because I knew when you invested in Hyperion, your expectation was not crashing the server after 19 hours. You couldn't close the book. But look, we stuck right now. We have a challenge. Let's work together, right? Don't worry about, I've seen this. So let's split the team into 2, right? The first team going to work with me, look at application design, look at where we are. The second team go get the data. So we assembled the 2 team. let's work together in the next 8 hours until we get this thing turned around.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So we all work, put our really, and I was able to guide them clearly. I spent a lot of time preparing for this before walking in. By the time I walk in, I was able to rally up the support from them, guide them step by step on how to do things, what to do. 10 hours later, they were able to run this, redesign the application, rerun the command. 30 seconds later, everything worked, right? So this is like after 2 to 3 days, we turn around situation. What I learned from this is the positivity really helps, right? Remember, I walk into the room, you have to people are upset, right? You have to acknowledge, really understand why, what made them to be upset. Then you have to also put yourself in their shoes and how do you work with them and understand, really figure out how, as a leader, that's what happened to us all the time, right? Sometimes we get frustrated. We always have the moment of frustration, but how do you turn around the situation like that? It truly is significant. You can make significant impact by doing things slightly differently. And sometimes inject a sense of humor can really help, right? And then preparation, as I said, it wouldn't just happen if there's no preparation. Then I call the partner, I walk them through what we did differently, making sure they learn from the experience, because if you just let it go, next time the partner, design another application, it could happen again. So I think the lesson we learned and then the actions we took during that situation and after situation also matters.
Sure. Actually, I wasn't with you on that particular rescue mission, but in my role, you were more than on the technical side. I was more on the management side, but in my role, I was running, management, projects across the country, large program efforts for clients. And in a way, we called ourselves smoke jumpers. You kind of jump into where the fire is and help figure out how to solve the problem. And in fact, actually, I a much more positive circumstance, I actually did some work with that same customer later on. So a couple of years later. So very nice.
Excellent. Well, Helen, what was the kind of a deciding factor that got you to change the initial career you were on? Was there anything that happened like all at once that you just had like an epiphany, decided to change, or you seem like you always had a kind of a always learning, always an entrepreneurial mindset? It was just over time you saw opportunity and made the leaps that way, or?
Yeah, a couple of things, Bill. One thing, I get bored easily. And then 2 is that failure gave me the courage to try something new, right? My career was a straight line success all the way through Marketo. And then once Marketo was acquired by Vista Equity, it was phenomenal, right? It just such a great run. And it painted the wrong picture to me, to my world. I felt like, hey, the entire world was rosy. And I joined another startup. It was a disaster. Right. I could say culture was not the right fit. You can really feel the difference, right? When you report to someone who couldn't even meet you, give you one-on-one time, and then there's always that misalignment about what you think is a priority versus what truly is priority. So, and then I realized that I need to do something new, right? So that's where I, reassess to really understand who I am, where my strengths is, what I really wanted to do. I'm always into the technology. Richard probably knows this, and learn new things. I want to get my hands on things that I haven't touched and learning. So that curiosity, always there. And then I was raised by my grandmother, so that grit and resilience has always been with me, right? So that's how I started Tigon Advisory, because I saw many companies from startup to large enterprise making the same mistakes. And I felt like, hey, there was a better way to scale organizations, right? If they could bridge the disconnects, right? I turned them into those 5 disconnects. And so we can grade, if they really understand, be aware what these disconnects are, then they can always growing the company more swiftly and delivering a better customer experience and company culture. And both I'm very, really passionate about. So and think about that, that's how I learned things. My journey really led me to recognize these critical gap patterns in the company. That's how really prompted me to become the entrepreneur of a startup accelerator.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
So Helen, as you were shifting toward creating Tigon and again leveraging and lending your expertise to many other companies, were there some obstacles you encountered along the way?
There are tons of them. When I first started that, there are days that you'll stare at a screen, you didn't have enough business to do. There are also days that you're overwhelmed because when you're on your own, the business is not flowing through the way you want to flow. Right now, when it rains, it pours, right? Sometimes you just don't have the bandwidth to do all the business. And so it's a fine balance for a founder to really balance, right? At what point you outsource and you reach out to your partners. So I build a really good partner ecosystem. We really help each other. I've worked with Grizzly as an 800 people firm out of India. So I get to really outsource the work, working with them, right? I also have other entrepreneurs who do what I do. So we also, exchange best practice. So I've learned a ton through that, but there are definitely obstacles. Sometimes you just, the scaling is one thing, right? The availability, capability, and capacity, those are other obstacles along the way.
Right.
Well, on the other side of that, Helen, what was one of the first victories at your new company that you can remember?
Yeah, it's very interesting, Bill. So when I advise a lot of founders on how to scale their business, one of the advice I gave it to them is how they can build their brand without investing so much money. So I build all these fantastic theory, right? And then I figured something. I was wondering maybe I should try it out because I don't want to build some theory, not knowing if it truly works. So I went on to use exactly theory to practice on my own. So I started building, right? This is how I got myself into social media. For those of you who don't know, I started off on Twitter. It was like 3.5 years ago, less than 4 years ago. And I had a 0 follower, but I started building that. Now I have 34,000 followers with 10 million weekly outreach, right? So my theory is I tested that without spending a penny. It's all through organic content generation, content creation generation, through engagement with other influencers in the industry, through, just to exchange insights and all that. So it proves that my theory really worked. So I'm very, very pleased with that. That would be, I would say, my first victory. A lot of my work through Twitter, like even Pipestream is a AI company out of New York. Their CMO, actually their chief growth officer, reached out to me, and then they flew me to New York through that exchange, gave me the job role as their advisor, right? So there are many other speaking engagement all through Twitter and LinkedIn. Believe it or not, right? People say, you should not waste time. But a lot of the work I do was AT&T, SAP, IBM, even Salesforce. Yeah, we just signed agreement where they want me to work with them for marketing, like more content creation, all those works through social media engagement.
Awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations on those. Those are some awesome companies that are your clients. So great. So Helen, since you've been with Tigon, since you created Tigon, is there something humorous that's you've encountered along the way? Any funny stories?
Well, I have to share this with you. Do you know who Jim Coyne is? Jim Coyne.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Jim is the president of Henry Coyne. He's the director of JP Morgan Chase, General Dynamics, and thoroughly very well known, right? So I actually sat next to him at a dinner during one event I was invited to, and really enjoyed his company. And then later on, he invited me to his Chicago office to reconnect. It's about a month later. And his chef actually served us breakfast in the conference room at his Chicago office. I was so sorry. I spent so much time preparing right prior because I was so excited about this. And I worked long hours the night before. For me, I live in the suburb of Chicago. I agreed to meet him at 7 a.m. in the office. That means I have to take the 6 a.m. train.
Right.
So I only had 3 hours sleep before this meeting. And then I got to his office. His chef served breakfast in the conference room. I, for some reason, was so nervous, right? Because I'm like so starstruck by him. And then at one point of our conversation, I reached my senior moment, lost train of thought. So I was like so damn embarrassed, right? Think about how I got to meet him. Like I wanted to really show that I'm really able to connect with, people like him. I actually, if I was just really relaxed, right, that dinner we had, I was totally fine. But then it was very interesting. I thought I screwed it up. I would never hear from him again. But I was wrong, right? 6 months later, I actually sent him an email just to check in. He responded right away. So the lesson I learned from this experience, sometimes trying too hard can backfire. You just need to be yourself. You need to really believe in yourself, be authentic, and don't try too hard. You need to rest before an important meeting, rather than learn right yourself. And then just the really interesting experience. But I mean, that was really a good lesson for me to learn. And
do your homework, prepare, but don't obsess. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think it's absolutely correct. I mean, people that are, if they're trying too hard, like you said, to close a deal, raise money, whatever, it's almost people can sense the desperation and wonder what's, what else there is. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, Helen, where are you today on your career journey? You started a new company, you're expanding that. Where do you see yourself now?
I'm trying to figure it out, Bill, to be honest with you. I haven't really decided, but I know one thing. I've been attending board meetings, presenting to the board in the past few years. I'm quite interested I'm currently a vice chairwoman and technology director at Global Cybersecurity Association. I would like to join a corporate board or private board in the next year also. So I feel like that could be a career transition for me. I haven't really decided. Their company, asking me if I would join them as operating executive again. So I'm an open book at the moment, trying to decide what's next.
That's great. It seems like with the news lately, there's been a lot of interest in cybersecurity with the ransomware attacks and all that coming up, and it seems definitely a wide open field.
Yes, it is indeed.
Yeah. So Helen, look down the road a little bit. Again, nobody has a crystal ball. We don't know where things are going to wind up, but look down the road to the future. I don't know, 10 years, what do you kind of see a little bit? What do you envision for Tigon and yourself and your growth?
I think Tigon would always exist in a way that I would say people remember that as a company who can help them multiply their growth, right? I started my CXO Spice Talk podcast, like what you do, but more of a video podcast, where it's an exclusive podcast where I launched it with Microsoft late March of this year. So SPICE, S stands for situation or scenario, and then P means point of view. I stands for innovation, right? C is more of a CXO point of view. E is execution. How do you make it? Not only the point of view on integration, innovation, but also how do you make it real, make it happen in real world? So it's inspired by Iron Man because I love Pepper in that, right? So Tony Stark and Piper. So that's being said, I think this Spice Talk, I've recorded 6 episodes so far, and then there are more to come. So that would continue no matter what I do next. I think that would continue to go. And to me, and in this, I want this company, its brand to inspire others, right? I'm a first generation immigrant. And so if I can do this, I came to JFK with $100 in my pocket. That was all the saving I've had. If I can do what I do today, anybody can succeed, right? You just need to figure out, who you are, what your purpose is, and really have the grit and resilience to make things happen. and learn, right? Absorb. And so that's what I want this brand to be. And when they think about Tigon, they think about the grit, resilience, they think about the you being a curious, courageous multiplier.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely critical. I mean, like I said, in any business, I think the clarity of focus on what your goal is, and then hand in hand, the grit and determination to see it through. You see a lot of people, especially in our business, like in just real estate, a wide swath, painting that wide, that people go down flipping or like notes or commercial, or there's just so many different things, almost the shiny object syndrome, and they go too wide but not deep enough to become a true expert in a field, and just kind of get mixed results for very surface level understanding of where they're operating.
Very good point, Bill. I echo what you just said. Absolutely.
Well, Helen, what is something you've recently implemented in your business that's helped you achieve your goals?
I wouldn't necessarily say I recently implemented, but I have say, having climbed Mount Everest base camp, there are 4 lessons I learned through that experience. Right, number one, prepare. You have to because I was not a real professional mountain climber. I spent so much time preparing for that trip, right? However, no matter how well you're prepared, you always run into the unexpected, right? This COVID, no one expects, so you have to be able to adapt, right? Adapt. But as some of you probably don't know, as you climb the Mount Everest, you go to base camp, you go to summit 1, then you come back to base camp, you go to summit 2, then you go back to base camp, go to summit 3. You don't go to, unless you're someone really unique, you don't go to the summit directly, because that process is called acclimate, right? Really allow your body to get used to the high altitude. So same things applies to business, because you have to acclimate. I say acclimate to the voice of your customer, acclimate to whatever things you learn, even though you define a strategy, but COVID hit, you have to revisit your strategy to realign, right? You adjust your practice processes to adapt to the new environment. And then the 4th thing I learned, you have to celebrate. You can't just go, because getting up to the mountain is not the goal. The goal is to safely return and take your whole team to get down from the summit all the way safely return. That's really end goal. So you got to celebrate as you build a company, whatever, celebrate that along the way. So those are the things that I learned as, we, as a leader, we need to inspire inspiration or devotion in our teams to achieve our goal. If we do everything by ourselves, it may not be where we need to be in the longer run. It's not sustainable. So I think as a leader, learning how to celebrate, recognize, the efforts from others, don't take it for granted, right? Learn how to recognize others' efforts and then celebrate that along the way. It's really critical.
Loosely quoted, Thich Nhat Hanh talks about the path is the way, the journey is the way. It's not Everest and you're done. It's a lot of the preparation. And again, like you said, celebrating with your team along the way. You're going to have, when you achieve something, you're not done. You got another thing you want to keep on moving towards. So, again, celebrate along the way, enjoy the journey. And that's all part of it, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which also I'd point out is very impressive that as not a professional mountain climber, you picked the tallest mountain in the world to start on. That's very ambitious. Yes.
So Helen, since you live in Chicago, I guess what did you do? You went out to the Sears Tower, walked the stairs up and down 6 times a day. Practice.
I think it's more than that. At that time, internet was not even like what we have. You go to the library every single day or weekend. You have to exercise and run. I couldn't afford a, personal trainer at the time either, right? So, but why? Because I want to keep my secret promise to my grandmother. That was once you know why. And once you really have that drive, that you become unstoppable. So important. If you just go there for leisure or sightseeing, I mean, the 4 other people who went with me, none of them made it, right? The 200 people were there on that trip, that they only 3 people made it, right? There's a reason, right? For why these, other than the physical, right, endurance, there are other reasons for those who were not able to make it.
Right. So Helen, what advice would you give somebody who's considering making a path change?
I would just say be curious and embrace the joy of being a lifelong learner. Because I started my career as an accountant and financial analyst. My curiosity and learning agility really got me where I'm at today. It's so important to take the time, understand who you are, what matters to you before you get on a new path for change, right? Because you're the only one who can define who you are. No one else could.
Mm-hmm. That's great advice. Yeah. Well, Helen, what's the best way for our listeners to be able to get a hold of you or follow you on Twitter? Or
yeah, they can definitely follow me on Twitter. My Twitter handler is YUHELENYU, and my website, I have Tigon Advisory at gmail.com, or they can find my book. It's called A Startup. You can go to Amazon to get a copy of my book. So you can always connect with me through different ways.
Great. Well, we'll put all those in the show notes so people can link to that. And Helen, we'd love to thank you for being on the show, The Road Less Traveled. It's been a great talk, and we wish you continued success. Yeah,
honored to be on the show today, Bill and Richard. I look forward to listening to your other episode of the show. I actually listened to a few, so really appreciate the podcast. I find it very meaningful.
Absolutely. Thank you, Helen. And again, we'd also like to thank our listeners. We really appreciate you tuning in. Please continue to do so. Please give us a 5-star rating. Again, we look forward to continuing to bring you great content and fantastic folks like Helen that they're able to come spend a little time with us. So thank you, audience. We also want to thank our sponsor, Park Capital Partners, for bringing the show to you. And remember, folks, the road less traveled may be calling you. We recommend that you listen and take action.